Episode 12. The Morning After Victory. Katherine Morrison woke at 4:47 a.m. in her Upper East Side apartment, her body still operating on the brutal schedule that had governed the past week. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying yesterday's emergency board meeting, Pemberton's face when she'd revealed the buried complaints, Westfield's abstention, not support, but temporary retreat. The coalition's promise to vouch for her at Friday's all-hands meeting, 3 days away. She'd survived, but survival wasn't victory. Her phone buzzed. Sarah Chen texting at 5:03 a.m. Stock down another 1.5% in pre-market. WSJ running follow-up. Pemberton's attorney released statement calling suspension politically motivated retaliation. Board members already asking for emergency calls. Katherine closed her eyes, of course. She'd made an enemy yesterday, and Richard Pemberton wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. He'd be working his network, talking to board members, building a case that Katherine had manufactured evidence to protect her failing reforms. She showered and dressed in the dark, choosing a navy suit that projected authority without aggression. By 5:47 a.m., she was in the back of a town car, reviewing Sarah's overnight briefing on her tablet. The Wall Street Journal article was brutal. Skyward CEO suspends CFO amid reform battle. The piece framed it as internal corporate warfare rather than accountability for misconduct. Pemberton's attorney had given them a quote. Mr. Pemberton's 3 decades of exemplary service speak for themselves. These allegations surface conveniently when his financial prudence threatens expensive initiatives. The implication was clear. Katherine had fabricated or exaggerated the complaint issue to eliminate opposition. Her phone rang. Jennifer Walsh, board member and swing vote. Katherine, I'm getting calls from other board members questioning yesterday's evidence, Walsh said without preamble. Pemberton's attorney is claiming the pending review folder was a legitimate triage system, not burial, that you took normal HR processes and characterized them as misconduct. Jennifer, there were 847 complaints spanning 3 years. I know what you showed us. But Pemberton's people are saying context matters, that many were duplicates or frivolous or already resolved through other channels. They're demanding an independent investigation before the suspension stands. Katherine felt ice in her stomach. An investigation will take weeks, maybe months. Meanwhile, he's suspended with pay, using that time to undermine the reforms. Better than him being reinstated because we acted hastily, Walsh said. David Park and Christine Blackwood are wavering. They're worried we made a snap judgment based on emotional presentation rather than thorough analysis. Those complaints detailed discrimination, harassment, retaliation, which is why we need proper investigation to prove it. Otherwise, Pemberton's attorney will claim we rushed to judgment and will face wrongful termination liability on top of everything else. Walsh's voice softened slightly. Katherine, I'm on your side. But you need to understand the legal exposure here. If we can't prove actual misconduct versus administrative backlog, we've just handed Pemberton grounds for a massive lawsuit. The call ended as Katherine's car pulled up to Skyward headquarters. She sat for a moment, watching early morning workers stream toward the building. Miguel would be ending his night shift soon. His daughter Maria, working on her Mars rover project, believing her father's employer cared about people like them. Katherine couldn't let Pemberton turn this into a he said, she said narrative, where administrative backlog excused years of ignored suffering. She found Sarah already at her desk, looking worse than yesterday, if that was possible. Dark circles under her eyes, coffee cup trembling slightly in her hand. Please tell me you slept, Katherine said. 3 hours. Sarah handed her a folder. But you need to see this. I spent the night cross-referencing those 847 complaints against HR resolution records, employee exit interviews, and legal settlements. Katherine opened the folder. Sarah had created a spreadsheet showing complaint dates, subject matter, assigned HR investigator, resolution status, and outcome. Color-coded rows revealed patterns. Red rows, 312 complaints, marked pending review for over 6 months with no documented follow-up. Orange rows, 203 complaints, closed as unfounded within 48 hours, often with identical boilerplate language suggesting no actual investigation. Yellow rows, 186 complaints, resolved with confidential settlements requiring NDAs, preventing complainants from discussing outcomes. Green rows, 146 complaints, actually investigated and resolved, mostly minor issues like scheduling conflicts or equipment problems. Notice anything about the color distribution? Sarah asked. Katherine studied the data. The red and orange complaints, the buried and dismissed ones, were almost exclusively discrimination, harassment, or safety issues. The green complaints, the ones that got real attention, were operational minutiae that didn't threaten anyone's authority or the company's liability. He was systematically filtering, Katherine said. Anything that could expose the company legally or challenge management went into the pending review black hole. Anything safe got resolved. Better than that, Sarah pulled up another spreadsheet. I matched complaint subjects against the HR investigators assigned. Guess who investigated almost every discrimination and harassment complaint? Katherine scanned the names. One appeared again and again. Victoria Pemberton. Richard's wife, Sarah said. She's been working in HR for 5 years as external compliance consultant, paid through a consulting firm that Richard approved the contract for. She investigated 89% of the sensitive complaints and found 91% of them unfounded. Katherine felt her hands go cold. That's not just burial, that's systematic cover-up, using a family member to provide legal cover. It gets worse. Sarah pulled up a third document. Victoria Pemberton's consulting firm has received $2.3 million over 5 years. The contract specifies she handles sensitive personnel matters requiring discretion. In corporate speak, that means make problems disappear. Jesus Christ. Katherine sat down heavily. He didn't just bury complaints. He built an entire shadow HR system to protect the company from liability while claiming due diligence. And here's the kicker. Sarah's voice was tight with exhaustion and anger. 3 of the complaints Victoria Pemberton marked unfounded, those employees later filed EEOC charges. Skyward settled all 3 out of court for a combined $890,000. But those settlements don't appear in any report Richard ever gave you or the board. Where did they appear? Legal department budget, classified as regulatory compliance expenses, not personnel costs, not settlement payments. Just generic compliance. Katherine understood immediately. By hiding settlements in legal budget line items, Pemberton had concealed the true cost of the company's discrimination and harassment problems. The board thought they were spending money on routine regulatory requirements when they were actually paying off victims of workplace abuse. This is fraud, Katherine said. Financial fraud, not just HR misconduct. Which is why his attorney is pushing the administrative backlog narrative so hard, Sarah said. If this becomes about financial misrepresentation to the board, Pemberton faces criminal exposure, not just employment termination. Katherine's phone buzzed, Marcus Westfield requesting an immediate call. She answered. Marcus. Katherine, we need to discuss yesterday's board meeting. Westfield's voice was carefully neutral. Several board members have expressed concern about the process used to suspend Richard. They feel we acted hastily based on incomplete information. The information was quite complete. 847 complaints, which Richard's attorney characterizes as normal HR workflow. Katherine, I abstained yesterday because I was shocked by the presentation. But after reflection and consultation with legal counsel, I'm concerned we may have overreacted. Katherine felt rage building, but kept her voice level. Marcus, are you seriously suggesting that burying nearly 900 employee complaints for 3 years is normal HR workflow? I'm suggesting we need independent verification before destroying a man's 30-year career. I'm calling for a special board meeting this afternoon at 2 p.m. to discuss appointing an independent investigator and potentially reinstating Richard pending investigation results. That's not a discussion. That's a reversal. That's due process, Westfield said, which Richard deserves, just like any employee. I've already spoken with David Park and Christine Blackwood. They agree we need to slow down and do this properly. The call ended. Katherine looked at Sarah. He's flipping the swing votes, Sarah said quietly. By this afternoon, you'll have lost the majority that suspended Pemberton yesterday. Not if we show them the financial fraud. Katherine grabbed the folder. Victoria Pemberton's consulting contract, the hidden settlements, the systematic misclassification of expenses. This isn't about HR processes. This is about deliberately misleading the board about company liabilities. Will they believe us? Sarah asked. Or will they think you're escalating accusations to justify yesterday's decision? Katherine didn't answer. Because Sarah was right. If she brought new evidence to today's board meeting, Westfield would characterize it as desperate attempts to justify a hasty decision. The narrative would become, Katherine Morrison, facing criticism for acting rashly, manufactures increasingly serious accusations to avoid admitting error. She needed allies who could verify her findings independently, board members who would see the financial fraud for what it was. Her phone rang again. Patricia Hughes. Katherine, Jennifer Walsh just called me about this afternoon's meeting, Patricia said. She's worried Westfield is going to railroad a reversal before anyone can properly review the evidence. I need you to send me everything Sarah compiled, the full complaint records, the investigation files, all of it. Patricia, there's more. Katherine explained Victoria Pemberton's role, the consulting contract, the hidden settlements. Silence on the other end. Then, you're telling me Richard paid his wife $2.3 million to make discrimination complaints disappear, then hid settlement payments in the legal budget to prevent board oversight? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Send me the documentation. All of it. I'm calling David Park and Christine Blackwood right now. If we can prove financial misrepresentation to the board, this isn't about HR processes anymore. This is about fiduciary breach. The call ended. Katherine looked at Sarah. Send Patricia everything, then call our corporate attorney. I want to know if what Pemberton did constitutes fraud under New York corporate law. Already did, Sarah said. Called him at 6 a.m. He's reviewing the documents now. Of course she had. Katherine felt a surge of gratitude for Sarah Chen, who'd worked through another night to build the case that might save Katherine's reforms and her career. Her phone buzzed again. Coalition meeting at my place tonight, 7 p.m. Need to prep for Friday. You coming? Katherine texted back. Wouldn't miss it, but I might be unemployed by then. Then you'll fit right in. We're all used to management screwing us over. Despite everything, Katherine smiled. James Rivera's dark humor was becoming oddly comforting. Sarah's phone rang. She answered, listened, then looked at Katherine with something between relief and concern. That was our corporate attorney. He says Victoria Pemberton's consulting arrangement, combined with the misclassified settlement payments, likely constitutes breach of fiduciary duty and possibly securities fraud if any of those hidden liabilities should have been disclosed to shareholders. Can we prove it by 2 p.m.? He's preparing a memo now. But Katherine, he says if we're wrong about this, if there's any legitimate explanation for the consulting contract or the expense classification, Pemberton's attorney will destroy us for defamation. Katherine thought about the coalition meeting tonight. About Miguel's daughter Maria and her Mars rover dreams. About James Rivera, who'd bet his credibility on Katherine being different from every other executive who'd promised change and delivered nothing. She couldn't let Pemberton return to power, not when she finally understood the scope of his corruption. We're not wrong, Katherine said. Send the memo to every board member as soon as it's ready. And Sarah? Yeah? After today, take a real day off. You're running on fumes. Sarah laughed, but there was no humor in it. If today goes badly, I'll have plenty of time off. We'll both be unemployed. Katherine spent the morning in meetings that felt surreal. Operations review at 8 a.m., customer service update at 9:30, training program discussion at 11. Everyone pretending yesterday's board meeting hadn't happened, that the CFO's suspension wasn't hanging over everything like a guillotine blade. At 1:15 p.m., Katherine's corporate attorney sent his memo. She read it twice, heart-pounding. The conclusion was damning. Victoria Pemberton's consulting arrangement appeared to violate conflict of interest policies, and the misclassification of settlement payments as routine legal expenses constituted material misrepresentation to the board. If any of those settlements related to incidents that should have been disclosed to shareholders, sexual harassment by executives, for instance, or safety violations, then Richard Pemberton had potentially committed securities fraud. At 1:47 p.m., Katherine walked into the boardroom for the 2 p.m. meeting. Patricia Hughes was already there, reading the attorney's memo on her tablet. David Park and Christine Blackwood sat together, looking uncomfortable. Marcus Westfield arrived at 1:55, looking confident. Richard Pemberton's attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Katherine Morrison, no relation to Katherine, arrived with him. "Thank you for convening on short notice," Westfield began at 2 sharp. "We're here to discuss yesterday's decision to suspend Richard Pemberton. After consultation with legal counsel, several board members feel we acted hastily and need to establish proper investigative procedures." Patricia Hughes cut him off. "Marcus, have you read the memo from Katherine's corporate attorney?" I glanced at it. More accusations piled on to justify yesterday's overreach. "Then you didn't read it carefully," Patricia said coldly. "Because if the allegations are true, Richard Pemberton didn't just bury HR complaints. He paid his wife $2.3 million to provide legal cover for doing so, then hid settlement payments from the board by misclassifying them as routine legal expenses." Katherine Morrison, Pemberton's attorney, spoke up. "Those are serious allegations requiring serious proof. My client's wife is a qualified HR consultant who provided legitimate services. The consulting arrangement was approved through proper channels." "Approved by Richard Pemberton himself," Katherine interrupted. "He signed the contract authorizing his own wife to investigate complaints against the company. That's textbook conflict of interest. The contract was reviewed by legal. And the settlement payments?" Patricia demanded. 3 EEOC cases settled for $890,000 total, classified as regulatory compliance expenses instead of personnel costs or legal settlements. Why would Richard hide those from the board unless he was trying to conceal the scope of the company's discrimination problems? Katherine Morrison's confidence flickered. "Settlement classifications are routine accounting decisions. Not when they materially misrepresent company liabilities to the board," Patricia said. "If Richard was hiding settlements to make his cost-cutting look more successful than it was, that's fraud. And if any of those settlements involved executive misconduct that should have been disclosed to shareholders, that's securities fraud." David Park spoke up. "Patricia, are you saying we should refer this to the SEC?" "I'm saying we need to take yesterday's suspension seriously instead of rushing to reverse it. Richard Pemberton may have committed crimes, not just policy violations." Westfield's face had gone red. "This is exactly what I warned about. Escalating accusations to avoid admitting we overreacted. Katherine, you're manufacturing a scandal to protect your failing reforms." "I'm presenting evidence," Katherine said quietly. "Evidence that Richard systematically deceived this board about employee complaints, company liabilities, and financial exposures. If you want to reinstate him without investigating these allegations, that's your choice. But when the lawsuits come, and they will come, you'll be personally liable for ignoring red flags." Silence. Christine Blackwood finally spoke. "I think we need to table the reinstatement discussion until we've had independent review of these financial allegations. If there's even a possibility of securities fraud, we can't act hastily in either direction." David Park nodded slowly. "Agreed. I move. We engage an independent forensic accounting firm to review Richard's expense classifications and Victoria Pemberton's consulting contract. Until that review is complete, the suspension stands." "Second," Patricia Hughes said immediately. Westfield looked around the table, seeing he'd lost. "Fine, but I want it on record that this board is making decisions based on unverified allegations from a CEO who's under pressure to show results. When this investigation exonerates Richard, we'll need to seriously discuss Katherine's fitness for leadership." The vote passed. Forensic review approved. Suspension maintained. Katherine Morrison stood. "My client will cooperate fully with any investigation because, unlike some people in this room, Richard Pemberton has nothing to hide." She left. Westfield followed. Katherine remained seated, feeling the adrenaline drain away. She'd survived again, but barely. Patricia Hughes approached as others filed out. "Katherine, you're running out of lives. That forensic review will take at least 2 weeks. If they find anything ambiguous, anything Westfield can spin as legitimate business practice, he'll use it to remove you." "I know. Then you better make damn sure Friday's all-hands meeting is perfect." because it might be your last chance to prove these reforms can work. Katherine left headquarters at 6:30 p.m., exhausted but grimly satisfied. The suspension held. The investigation was proceeding. She had 3 more days. She arrived at James Rivera's Queens apartment at 7:08 p.m. The coalition was already there. Diana Reeves, Raymond Chen, Elena Vasquez, Marcus Thompson, Angela Martinez, Thomas Okonkwo. They looked up as she entered. "So," James said, "still CEO?" "For now," Katherine said. "Pemberton suspended pending investigation. Westfield tried to reverse it today, but failed." "Tried to reverse it?" Diana Reeves looked incredulous. "The man was burying discrimination complaints for 3 years, and they wanted to reinstate him?" "They wanted due process," Katherine said dryly, "which apparently means giving him every possible benefit of the doubt while giving me none." Thomas Okonkwo shook his head. "This is why we don't trust management. You finally do the right thing, and they immediately try to undo it. Which is why Friday matters," James said. "If the frontline employees see the boards already trying to reverse course, they won't believe anything Katherine promises." Katherine sat down heavily in the same chair she'd occupied last night. "So what do we tell them? That I suspended the CFO for corruption, but the board might reinstate him? That I'm fighting for reforms, but might be fired before implementing them?" "You tell them the truth," Raymond Chen said. "That you're fighting a system that protects executives and sacrifices workers. That you need their help to change it. That alone you'll lose, but together you might win." Elena Vasquez nodded. "Don't promise us victory. Promise us you'll fight. That's all we've ever wanted from management. Someone who gives a damn and won't stop trying." Katherine felt something loosen in her chest. "I can promise that. Fighting is all I've been doing since I came back." "Then let's make sure Friday shows it," Diana said. "Now let's talk about your speech." They worked until past midnight again, crafting Katherine's message for Friday. Not corporate platitudes, but honest acknowledgement of how badly the company had failed its people. Specific commitments, with specific timelines and specific accountability measures. As Katherine finally left at 12:40 a.m., James walked her to her car. "You know Westfield's going to try to stop this speech, right?" he said. "The all-hands meeting is public. Once you say these things in front of everyone, you can't take them back." "I know," Katherine said. "That's the point. And if the board fires you afterward, then I'll have kept my promise to tell the truth, regardless of the cost." Katherine met his eyes. "My parents taught me that leadership means making hard choices. I'm finally understanding what they meant." James nodded slowly. "Okay, then we'll be there Friday. All of us. And we'll have your back." Katherine drove back to Manhattan through empty streets, her mind already on tomorrow's challenges. Westfield would keep pushing. The forensic investigation would take weeks. The Wall Street Journal would keep running stories questioning her judgment. But Friday, she'd stand in front of the entire headquarters staff, executives and frontline workers together, and tell the truth about what she'd learned undercover, about what needed to change, about why it mattered. And whatever happened after that, Katherine Morrison would finally be able to look at herself in the mirror and see a leader her parents would recognize. Her phone buzzed as she pulled into her building's garage. "Sarache, running another story tomorrow." Skyward board split over reform direction. They have quotes from unnamed sources saying you're destabilizing the company. Westfield's not done. Katherine replied, "Let him talk. Friday, we show everyone what real change looks like." She rode the elevator to her apartment, thinking about Miguel's daughter Maria and her Mars rover dreams. About James Rivera's grandmother, who died working as a hotel maid, receiving only a cheap gold watch at her funeral. About all the employees who'd filed complaints that disappeared into Richard Pemberton's pending review folder. 2 more days until Friday. 2 more days to survive Westfield's attacks, the board's doubts, and the financial market's skepticism. But Katherine Morrison had learned something during her 9 days undercover. The people who actually ran Skyward Airlines, the flight attendants, pilots, mechanics, gate agents, were tired of being invisible. They were ready to fight for change. And this time they had a CEO who was finally ready to fight with them, even if it cost her everything.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.